I can't say I regret, but I couldn't mention them. And they were setting it all up in this crowd, and then you like, what the hell? And there's a bank robbery. It doesn't mean that they're absolutely useless, but they may have slipped up once on something.
Gary Oldman disappears. That's his gift. He becomes Sid Vicious, Lee Harvey Oswald, Dracula, Winston Churchill. You don't see Gary Oldman on screen. You see the character so completely that the actor vanishes.
Bring me everyone.
What do you mean, everyone?
This kind of transformation requires absolute commitment, fearless risk-taking, and a refusal to play it safe. So when Oldman hates a film, he's watching actors do the opposite. Playing it safe, choosing technique over truth, letting prosthetics do the work that should come from within. Understanding Oldman's hatred means understanding his philosophy about performance. He despises laziness disguised as craft. He hates when actors impersonate instead of inhabit, when they chase awards instead of honesty, when they hide behind makeup and accents without finding the soul underneath. Oldman built his career on dangerous choices that could have destroyed him. He played monsters, addicts, and broken men without asking audiences to like him. These 7 films represent everything Oldman fought against. They choose safety over risk. They prioritize Oscar campaigns over artistic integrity. They let actors coast on impersonation, while critics mistake surface-level mimicry for genuine transformation. Some won major awards. Some made their stars even bigger. But to Gary Oldman, they're examples of acting at its most cowardly and dishonest. This list matters because it reveals what real transformation requires. Not just makeup and accents, but vulnerability and truth. Let's examine the 7 films Gary Oldman truly despises. 7. Bohemian Rhapsody, 2018. Bohemian Rhapsody made Rami Malek an Oscar winner. He studied Freddie Mercury's movements obsessively. He perfected the overbite and the posture. The Live Aid recreation is technically impressive. And Gary Oldman watched an actor play the surface of someone while never finding the person underneath.
No, I came away with enormous admiration for him. He's incomparable to any figure.
This is impersonation at its most polished and its most empty. Here's what bothers Oldman about Malek's performance. It's all exterior. The voice, the walk, the mannerisms. Everything is technically correct but emotionally hollow. Malek is so focused on hitting Mercury's physical tics that he never finds the vulnerability, the pain, the complexity of who Freddie actually was. It's a greatest hits compilation of recognizable moments without any real humanity connecting them. Oldman knows the difference because he's lived it. When he played Sid Vicious in Sid and Nancy, he didn't just copy Sid's look. He found the desperate, damaged kid underneath the punk rock costume. When he played Joe Orton in Prick Up Your Ears, he captured the sexuality, the wit, and the self-destruction that made Orton who he was. These weren't impersonations. They were inhabitations. You believe these were real people, not actors performing research. The story goes that Oldman was asked about Bohemian Rhapsody at a small industry event. He reportedly chose his words carefully but made his point clear. Rami did impressive physical work, but where's Freddie and all that mimicry? Where's the person? It wasn't meant as cruelty. It was an honest assessment from someone who understands what transformation actually requires. 6. The Iron Lady, 2011. Meryl Streep won her 3rd Oscar for playing Margaret Thatcher. The makeup was stunning. The accent was perfect. The physical transformation was remarkable. And Gary Oldman saw exactly what was missing, an actual human being underneath all that technical mastery.
And I went, it's ridiculous. There's a castle at the end of this road. And
this is what happens when an actor relies on prosthetics to do the emotional work.
1941, when Japan attacked Pearl Harbor, did America go?
Here's Oldman's problem with The Iron Lady. Streep is so focused on getting Thatcher's voice and posture exactly right that she never finds who Thatcher actually was. The film shows you a great impersonation of a political figure, but it never reveals the complicated woman who divided a nation. It's all surface. The makeup is impressive. The vocal work is precise. But where's the person? Oldman played Winston Churchill in Darkest Hour. He also wore prosthetics and studied the voice and physicality. But underneath all that technical work, he found Churchill's fear, his doubt, his desperation during Britain's darkest hour. The makeup served the performance instead of replacing it. You saw Churchill's humanity through the transformation, not just the transformation itself. What frustrates Oldman is the critical response. Reviewers praise Streep's technical work as if technique alone equals great acting. But acting requires more than mimicry. It requires finding the psychology, the vulnerability, the specific humanity of the person you're playing. The Iron Lady offers impersonation without illumination. It shows you what Thatcher looked and sounded like without revealing who she was. 5. First Man, 2018. First Man had everything the Academy loves: historical importance, technical brilliance, a serious actor doing serious work.
That's one small step for man.
Ryan Gosling played Neil Armstrong with quiet intensity and minimal dialogue. And Gary Oldman watched a film that mistakes withholding emotion for depth.
It was all done as a joke. And that was the thing. I played the scene.
That confuses silence for complexity. That prioritizes Oscar-friendly restraint over actual human behavior. Here's what makes Oldman's skin crawl about this performance. Gosling plays Armstrong as nearly catatonic. The man has almost no emotional range. His son dies and he barely reacts. He goes to the moon and shows minimal wonder. He's so internalized that there's nothing to internalize. Damien Chazelle and Gosling apparently decided that still waters run deep meant playing Armstrong as a blank slate and calling it profound. Oldman understands playing internalized characters. His performance in Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy is deliberately restrained. George Smiley is a man who reveals nothing. But underneath that control, you sense the intelligence working, the pain of betrayal, the exhaustion of a life spent in shadows. Oldman gives you enough to understand what Smiley is holding back. Gosling gives you nothing and asks you to pretend it's meaningful. The story that allegedly happened involved Oldman discussing First Man with other actors during awards season. Someone praised Gosling's restraint. Oldman reportedly responded with characteristic bluntness. There's a difference between restraint and absence. Ryan chose to be absent. The conversation apparently moved on quickly, but Oldman's point was made. 4. Green Book, 2018. Green Book won Best Picture by telling a simple story about racism. A racist Italian driver learns to be less racist by driving a black pianist through the South. They become friends. Racism is solved through exposure and fried chicken.
Ended up not doing it, or not even, I don't think I even went in for a meeting. I just said, it's not, I don't get it.
And Gary Oldman sees this as everything wrong with how Hollywood approaches complex subjects. It simplifies what should remain complicated. It offers easy redemption when none exists.
Giving me that, right?
Yeah, I should stay away, but what?
Here's what Oldman hates about this film. Viggo Mortensen plays Tony Lip as a lovable bigot. The film acknowledges his racism just enough to show you he grows past it. By the end, he's learned his lesson, and everyone hugs. The movie treats centuries of systemic oppression as individual prejudice that disappears through personal connection. That's not how racism works. That's how white audiences want to believe racism works. Oldman built his career playing complicated villains and morally ambiguous characters. In Leon, Norman Stansfield is terrifying, but also pathetic and damaged. In True Romance, Drexel Spivey is monstrous, but somehow still human. Oldman never simplifies his characters into easily digestible lessons. He finds the contradictions and lives in them. Green Book does the opposite. It reduces everything to easy answers. The alleged incident happened at a private dinner where someone mentioned loving Green Book's message. Oldman reportedly stayed quiet until directly asked his opinion. Then he said something that made the table uncomfortable. It's a fairy tale about racism where the racist learns and grows. Real racists don't work that way, but Hollywood needs to believe they do. 3. Hacksaw Ridge, 2016. Hacksaw Ridge tells the true story of Desmond Doss, a conscientious objector who became a war hero.
No, sir, I don't.
Why are you contesting it then? Why is it so?
Mel Gibson directed it as religious propaganda disguised as a war film. Andrew Garfield plays Doss as a simple, pure-hearted believer without a shred of doubt or complexity, and Gary Oldman sees this as one of the most dishonest portrayals of heroism in modern cinema. Real people aren't saints. Real heroes have darkness. Here's the problem. Gibson presents Doss as nearly Christ-like. He never wavers. He never questions. He faces horrific violence and maintains perfect faith. The character has no interior conflict beyond other people doubting him. Garfield plays him with wide-eyed sincerity that feels more like a performance of piety than actual humanity. Doss becomes a symbol instead of a person. Oldman understands playing extreme characters. He's played monstrous people and heroic people and everything in between. But he always finds humanity first. Even when he played Jim Gordon in the Dark Knight trilogy, a genuinely good man in a corrupt city, he gave Gordon doubt and exhaustion and moral struggle. Heroes are interesting because they struggle with their choices, not because they're perfect. 2. The King's Speech, 2010. The King's Speech follows a simple formula. Take a historical figure, add a disability or struggle, cast a respected British actor, make it tasteful and inspiring, win Oscars.
Face boldly up to the bloody thing and stare it square in the eye, as would any decent Englishman. Shows in command.
Tom Hooper directed it. Colin Firth starred in it and won Best Picture for it. And Gary Oldman sees it as the perfect example of what's wrong with prestige filmmaking. It's predictable, safe, and designed specifically to win awards rather than tell the truth. Here's what Oldman despises about The King's Speech. It's calculation disguised as art. Everything about it is engineered for Oscar consideration. The historical setting, the British royalty, the overcoming obstacles narrative, the friendship between different classes. It hits every Academy button without taking a single risk. Firth gives a perfectly respectable performance of a man with a stutter. That's it. There's nothing dangerous or surprising or genuinely revealing. Oldman chooses unpredictable work. He's collaborated with directors like Luc Besson, Christopher Nolan, Alex Cox, filmmakers who take risks and make unexpected choices. Even when he plays historical figures like Churchill, he looks for directors who won't make the safe, obvious film. Tom Hooper makes exactly the safe, obvious film every single time. The alleged story is that Oldman was navigating awards season when The King's Speech swept everything. People kept comparing his work to Firth's, asking him about the film. Oldman reportedly grew increasingly frustrated with the question. Finally, at some private gathering, he said what he really thought. It's competent. It's respectable. It's exactly what the Academy wants. That's the problem. 1. Vice 2018. This is the film Gary Oldman hates most. Vice gives you Christian Bale playing Dick Cheney as a cartoon villain.
Been Secretary of Defense. I have been Chief of Staff.
Adam McKay directs it with smug superiority, using comedy techniques to tell you how evil his subject is. The film has no interest in understanding Cheney as a human being. It wants to mock him, judge him, and make audiences feel smart for agreeing. And Oldman sees this as the complete betrayal of what acting should be. Here's what makes Vice unforgivable to Oldman. Bale doesn't play a person, he has an attitude. Every scene is about showing you how terrible Cheney is. The performance is all prosthetics and vocal effects with nothing underneath. Bale gained weight and perfected the voice. But where's the human being? Where's the attempt to understand what drives someone to make these choices? McKay and Bale decided understanding was less important than condemning. Oldman has played politicians and powerful men throughout his career. In Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, he plays a spy who's been betrayed but never loses his professionalism. He finds humanity in a man who operates in shadows and moral gray zones. Even when Oldman plays villains, he looks for what makes them human. Vice does the opposite. It turns Cheney into a monster and calls that political commentary. These 7 films choose safety over risk, impersonation over transformation, awards over art. Oldman's hatred protects what performance should be. Honest, vulnerable, dangerous? What performance felt most dishonest to you? Share below and subscribe.